in the Content Quilt Block in the teeny tiny foundation paper pieced version right here. This is the Live Well, Live Strong quilt. The quilt is available in 20 inches by 20 inches, and that's the quilt block that we're going to work on today. But the quilt pattern for it is the Live Well, Live Strong quilt, and it's available in sizes that's the 60 by 60 inches, the twin, king, queen, and full, or the bed runner version. And so you can purchase that. I organized mine in a 3-ring binder, and you guys see me reference to it like that. So, but the quilt block that we're going to work on today is the Content Quilt Block. We did a tutorial on how to make the classic sized version, and which is 8.5 by 8.5 inches. But today we're going to work on the foundation paper pieced teeny tiny version right here. And the Live Well, Live Strong quilt is all about, it has 26 different quilt blocks that are skill building quilt blocks that are about health and wellness for women. Hi Belle, how are you? I'm sorry I'm late today. I had some phone calls that I had to make, or that were coming to me that I had to take. So I apologize for that, but let me go ahead and flip the camera because I'm going to kind of show you my cutting surface here. Hello Delinda, how are you? It's so good to see you. So let me go ahead and flip the camera so you guys can see my workspace right here. So I've got, of course, my sewing machine. I've got my scissors, paper cutting scissors, fabric scissors, my little ruler, my little rotary blade, a pencil. I have teeny tiny pins that I work with, a little teeny tiny iron that I'm working with, and I'm adding tape to my list here today. You just get some regular Scotch tape. Here I have got my blocks. I have my pattern and my book that I wanted to show you because the Content Quilt Block, it has 25 different little pieces in it. So it's a little bit more complex of a quilt block to do foundation paper piecing. So you've got lots of different little pieces to sew right here, but they're sewn in different units. So if you just kind of do it one step at a time, you'll be just fine. But I've pre-sewn some. Hi Jane, hi Josephine. It's so good to see everybody. I've got my cute little Luke in the hospital right now, so I had to take some phone calls from there and try to help some things out over on that side. So, okay, so here is the Content Quilt Block for the foundation paper piecing. What you want to do is, while you have it out, laid out like this, it is almost like an exploded template of what it looks like right here. You want to go ahead and scribble down with your pencil what the fabric colors are that you're wanting to use in yours. So I know this center block is red. I have a light pink right here and a light pink, and I've got yellow and yellow. So I'm just kind of scribbling down the colors of the fabric that I'm using with my pencil right there on the pattern block. Now I am using this as an example on a regular piece of paper, which you might actually want to have a regular piece of paper that you have as your template as you're dealing with all of your small pieces. But let's keep writing this down. So once again, I've got light pink here, I've got yellow, white, and white, yellow, white, white, light pink. And then over here, I've got this lipstick. I'm putting an L for me. It's this pink fabric right here. These are all teal. So, and we have a lot of repetitive blocks here, okay? All 4 of these are completely the same. These 2 are completely the same, and this is separate. So, I did some pre-sewing on this, and I've already done this on my little template that I made. So, let me go ahead and show you what I have done over here. Let me get my pieces. So I've gone ahead and I've stitched together my corner pieces. So there's 1, 2, and 3 corner pieces right here. And then on top of that, I've also sewn together this one little top piece right here. So you can see this little unit right here, and then my 3 corner pieces. I wanted to show you that I accidentally cut off this piece of the paper right here when I was trimming for that 1/4 inch seam. And I wanted to show you how to fix that if you have that problem. So what you would do is just take a piece of Scotch tape. Oh dear. Is this completely, my Scotch tape is not started on the Scotch tape roll. Good golly gracious. I hate it when things aren't like all the way prepared. And you know, anyways, you need a piece of Scotch tape, which I guess I could use this teeny tiny little piece right there for the moment, okay? And you just kind of tape it back together. I find that it's helpful to have your, so I just put that little piece of tape down there, and I find it's helpful to have all these little pieces on there so that when I'm squaring up the little block and cutting it apart, anyways, yeah, I think that's on there good. Okay, so I just put that on with the teeny tiny piece of tape. Then when I am squaring up this little quilt block, I'm actually getting really accurate with the cuts. Oopsie, let me go ahead and trim that on that side, and let me go ahead and trim this on this other side. So let me go ahead and go boom and boom. So then I know that I've got a really good cut right there, okay? So let's go ahead and put this back, and let's do the rest of all of our little pieces. Hi, Dolores, it's so good to see you. It's so good to see everybody. I just love it. Now, I have my other pieces right here. I kind of wanted to keep it intact in this format while I was kind of pulling this out. So you can see that I've sewn together 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those 4 segments, and I've got 3 little segments left to sew together. So I'm going to do this little teal unit right here. I'm going to do this little yellow unit with you, and then this little center unit. I have over here my little strips of fabric that I like to use, and this is my piece of cardstock. So let's go ahead and cut this apart with our paper scissors. I am using newsprint over here, whereas here I just used a regular piece of copy paper for my template, so that if I get kind of turned around with the pieces, I can see where things are. Okay, so that's that center piece. This is the piece just like that. And this is our other teal corner. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's maybe work on this center piece real fast, because that is a pretty easy one. And once again, you could go with thinner, smaller pieces of fabric right here. So I love working with little strips of fabric, and I just kind of keep my little fabric scraps in strips like that. Now let's look at our numbering here. This is the center of the block. This is unit A of the Content Quilt block. So our first 2 pieces is a yellow piece right here and a light pink. So let's grab those 2 pieces of fabric. So here is my light pink right here, and here is my white fabric. And I might just go ahead, for the sake of simplicity, to show you how it's easy to work together with this. I'm going to just go ahead and trim these down about the width of my pattern right here. Okay, so we're going to just take it like that, and we have our pieces that we're going to work with with this little segment. So now with our foundation paper piecing, so we're doing teeny tiny foundation paper piecing. The A1 piece is right here, and the next A2 is red. So actually, let me go ahead and switch this. So A1 is the light pink right here, and I'm going to go ahead and just lay that. A1 goes the closest to the back of the paper. Then right sides together, I'm going to put the red piece next to it. And we're stitching right along this line right here. So you can see A1 is light pink, and A2 is the R for the red. So you can see that right there. I'm going to stitch right along that stitch line. I'm going to fold this back so you guys can picture this. So you can see here are my 2 raw edges kind of lined up together with about 1/4 inch of a seam allowance. So you can see that. I'm going to bring this down just a little bit, and we're going to do some teeny tiny stitching. So you guys, on this quilt block, you are going to see 25 pieces of fabric come together in one little tiny foundation paper pieced quilt block. Okay, so there we are. I've got that. Let's grab my mat to iron and press this. Let's press it open, and let's look at the paper again, and let's see what our next piece is. So it says A1, A2, and A3 is the light pink again. So I'm going to fold down the paper on that dash stitch line between A2 and A3. And if I want to make sure I've got a good fold, I can put my piece of cardstock right up to the dash stitch line, and fold that back. All right, and then I know that I'm going to trim this off right there. So let's go ahead and bring this back to the mat. And I'm going to just give myself a little trim with that red fabric. Okay, I'm going to set the red fabric aside because I know that's my only piece of red there. And now I'm going to take some of this light pink. So let's go ahead and grab this back end of the light pink. I don't want to confuse you guys or anything, but I'm going to grab the back end of that light pink. I'm going to put right sides of fabric together. You can see where I folded that down. And I'm now going to stitch on that dotted line. Hi, Kimberly. It's so good to see you. I love seeing every single one of you guys. And just as an update, we now have Betty and Brant back to independent living. Brant doesn't have his IV antibiotics anymore. And Betty gets off her wound care suction machine today. And she is healing really well too. So it's amazing how, time and patience brings you the things that you need. So here we are with this center little piece right here. Let's go back to the front of it. We're going to go back to, it's almost like a puzzle piece. We did A1, A2, A3. So we're going to fold back the line on A3 and get kind of a little bit of a dashed line there. And we're going to trim our excess fabric. A4 is actually yellow. So we're going to grab our yellow piece of fabric. So you can see the Y right there on yellow for Y. Let's go ahead and grab our yellow piece. I had a really sweet little piece, didn't I? Did I not use yellow yet? I did, didn't I? I already did on the other piece. So I'm going to take this yellow piece right here. I'm going to put right sides together, my fabric on the back of the paper. And then I'm going to just stitch right along with a really teeny tiny stitch my fabric right here on the sewing machine. So I'm using a 2.0 stitch right here. Okay, so the quilt block that we have today is called content. And sometimes we have to be content with things that may not be perfect in our lives, right? And we have to find contentment in healing and patience in healing. I know that Sweet Betty and Brant, it's been hard for them to feel patient and to tolerate going from being independent people that are 98 and 101 to then being dependent. And that was really frustrating and hard for them. I'm going to trim off this piece because I've got A1, A2, A3, A5, and now I'm going back to A4. So let's go ahead and trim this one off. And we're going to put some more yellow over here. So let's go ahead and trim off this yellow. And I'll go back to using this other side. And then I'm going to trim down this. We have the center of this completely done now. So you can see how that just comes together. You just have to patiently sew together the units and just take your time with it. You don't have to go super speedy fast, and just be patient because this is the most darling little quilt block. It is only 3.5 inches square. We are now going to take our rotary blade with our ruler and we are going to trim off our excess fabric. So let's go ahead and trim. And let's trim this over here. And let's go ahead and trim again right along here. And trim right along here. Okay, so, and I am going to trim and trim. And we're going to turn it over and it's going to look like the sweetest little piece of piece together. Isn't that just so darling and sweet? So this just pieces right here next to these pieces. And now all we have to do, did I drop a piece? We're going to go back here and sew the other teal piece, and we have to sew this little piece right there. So I've got lipstick in the center and teal pieces all the way around. You can go ahead, this is my lipstick fabric. You can go ahead and kind of, I've done this where, you put your lipstick down, and we need our teal fabric piece right here. So let's go ahead and get this. So teal is D1. The section I'm working on was one of the corner pieces. This one is teal. D is the section I'm working on. So I'm going to do D1, and D2 is actually the lipstick. So for D1, I've got that up on the back of the paper and then lipstick fabric. So let's go ahead and stitch this at the 2.0. So you guys, how do you find contentment when sometimes you're experiencing sickness and things that are just not really fun. How do you find contentment in that? And how do you find a source of peace during those times? I think that's something to talk about, as we've kind of had so many losses this last year and so many things that have gone just a little bit awry. I'm going to trim down my fabrics here that I have because I don't need all this on here. We're going to just trim this down. And remember, my little lipstick is just kind of a small little area right there. So I'm going to bring this over. And we're going to put on this corner unit right up here. And this is where you have to tear just a little bit of the stitches. You tear your paper, but in order to fold that back to trim your 1/4 inch of a seam allowance, because you really don't want a lot of fabric in these corners. So I'm tearing this back, although I feel like I've got just huge fingers right now and can't get into these tiny little spaces. So how do we find contentment even though things might be a little funky in our lives? We're going to trim this back, and we're going to add another piece of teal in this corner right here. So let's go ahead and grab another piece of teal. I've got it right sides together. I'm using solid sew, and I'm going to just go ahead and stitch along the dashed line on my newsprint paper. So let's go ahead and stitch this along. I find that there is so much contentment no matter what you are going through. There are so many things to be grateful for. We have to be grateful for every single day that we've got, where we have as many abilities as we possibly can have. We are now going to go ahead and stitch this other side right over here. Let's trim off some of our excess fabric. And that we just have to be so grateful for every single day that we have the abilities that we can actually experience the world and just feel the wind outside and feel the sunshine, if there is sunshine during the winter, if we have clear skies, that we can feel just the beauty of the earth and be able to appreciate the things that we can experience while we're doing things. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put on my last piece of teal fabric here. Let me go ahead and grab another little strip, and I just love kind of working with these little strips. I can kind of bend it over a little bit there. And I'm going to show you, this one is slightly different from the other three that I stitched together. I stitched this in a different pattern, but any way that you stitch this, it will be just fine. So I want to show you that if things are just slightly different from these, it won't show up in the end. So let's go ahead and trim this off. Okay, we're going to go ahead and just bring this over here and trim this clean. I don't think I need that teal. I might be rejecting my little teal fabric a little bit too soon. Let's go ahead and trim off this other edge right here. And then we've got our little dog ears that are already kind of trimmed off right there. But I'm going to just go ahead and follow the pattern of the foundation paper piecing portion right here. So I would say this is one of the trickier blocks. So let's go ahead and look at our layout now once again. Here we go. So we have just one more piece to put on here, which is this other piece, yellow piece right here. And I have that right there. But first I want to show you how we're going to stitch this together. So once again, because I want you to be able to see this quilt block start coming together. We want to make certain that we're matching our seams. And that was why I wanted to tape that piece back on there as it came off. And you will find that will commonly happen to you. So here I'm wanting to match up my seam allowances right in there. And I'm making sure that I've got my blocks are matching. I am using these teeny tiny fabrics. Okay, uh-oh. I might need to take that phone call, but let me see. Hold on, let me just see. Let me see. No, I don't think so. This is Deanna. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me give you a call right back. Oh. Okay, so anyways, here we go. So now what we are going to do is just kind of stitch right along this seam allowance line right there. But I do want to make sure that this is in there nice and solid, but I'm using those teeny tiny little stitches or teeny tiny little pins. So let's go ahead and stitch right along our seam allowances, and then you can see this block coming together. So we've got this right here. Let's go ahead and open it and see if it matched. I keep the teeny tinies, and that looks like a great match to me. So you can see that right there. We're going to go ahead and press this open. Oh my goodness gracious. What is this? I don't know what that what that phone number is to answer, but I'm going to just let that ring. Okay, I will have to call people back. Okay, so here we have another one right here. So we're going to go ahead and just do that exact same one on the other side, and we will have a full square, put our little corners on there, and we will be just perfect. So let's go ahead and do this last little one. So remember, we start with, this is a piece F, and we're going to start with F1, just right over here, and that's a white, and it's up against F2, which is a light pink. So let's go ahead and lay these right sides together. Since F1 is white, that one will be the one that first touches the back of the paper, and then we are going to stitch right across. So let's go ahead and sew this one together real quickly. And if you just stitch away and then trim these up, it sure is fun to see these little teeny tiny blocks come together. Okay, so let's go ahead and press this real fast. And this is how you foundation paper piece in a teeny tiny way. But what's really fun is you can think of all the ways that you can be content and satisfied and feel satisfaction, even though there might be things that are awry in your life. There's just so many things to be grateful for. And there's so much too. So now we have got another piece of white over here. So I'm going to go ahead and add that one back on right over there. Let's stitch through our paper, through our foundation paper piecing. So foundation paper piecing is where you're using a piece of paper or fabric to actually keep that, to stabilize all your fabrics and to know where to sew them together. So we've got white, pink, white, and we're going to put a piece of yellow on the end. So my yellow is right here. I'm going to trim back though where the yellow goes, right here on this top of this corner. So I'm going to peel back my fabric, and I'm going to have to tear through some of the stitching right here because I need to actually make this so it's got a decent seam right there. And so let's go ahead and pull that back. Now I need to pull back these other pieces right there so you can see that. And here we go. And we are going to once again go ahead and trim this. So because I'm using excess fabric, which is just fine, you just have a little bit more to trim off, but it's okay. It's such a small piece of fabric. Okay, let's go ahead and lay those back, and let's put our yellow on that back side right there. Okay, and let's bring that around. And here we go. Okay, so now we just go ahead and press this out. And I'm going to, there we go. So now we're going to just go ahead and cut this off. And all we have to do is sew this little block together. It really is fun to sew tiny, you guys. It just is so fun, and it's so cute, and it's such a sweet little arrangement that we've got here. And we've got 25 different pieces of fabric going into a 3.5 inch square. Okay, let's go ahead and use our scissors, and I'm just cutting a tiny bit of the newsprint with those scissors. Okay, so this is the part. Let's go ahead and lay this back down so you can see what the block looks like. We have all of the elements for our block right here. So you can see all these pieces together. We're just going to sew them, and it's just going to look just like the quilt and be our small piece. So let's go ahead and match that together. And we're going to put this side that we just barely sewed. I wanted you guys to see a little sample of sewing each one of those. And we want those seams to match. And I'm going to just stitch right along that 1/4 inch seam right there. In fact, let me just bring that up a little tiny bit more. And just get that placed just perfectly. Okay, there we go. Let's go ahead and bring this back over. Okay, and back up. Okay, there we go. So we're going to press this open. So that looks like a great little square that has its sides all matching. And we're going to go ahead and sew the rest of the pieces to this. Let's see right there. This looks just a little bit wonky. I'm trying to see what feels a little bit wonky right there. So I can actually see that I've sewn a little bit too far down on this one side. So I'm going to use my seam ripper. Can you guys see how that's just not straight? Since this is the internal part of the block, I want to go ahead and unpick this. So let me show you how to unpick these teeny tiny little blocks. You're going to bring that up and just open it ever so slightly and just patiently go and clean that off. And I have just pulled that up a little bit too far over there. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and straighten out this little side right here. But you can see that we just keep building out this little tiny content block. And we find contentment in any of our mistakes, because it's through our mistakes that we learn how to do things better. And one thing that I could have done, and I'm going to use my scissors here, is trimmed off a little bit more of the top of that content block so that I can see that that is straightly on there with the back of this. I really let a little bit too much show just right on there. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch right along here one more time. I'm pleased with how it matches up. Actually, let's go ahead and just unpick that whole little thing. But this is how you unpick whenever you have something that you're not super confident about. And you guys, the unpicking goes pretty fast. So don't feel worried about that. Okay, here we go. Ta-da! Okay, let's go ahead and pull that back. And once again, I'm going to match this up so that my seams are perfectly matched. And I'm going to want to make sure, let's stick 2 pins in this, because I only put in 1 pin, so that might be one of the reasons why it shifted. You're going through a lot of different layers of fabric that has been folded over along with your newsprint paper. So you can see right there, I'm going to go ahead and bring that over. Okay, let's go ahead and stitch that straight on there. There we go. Okay, so, and let's take out those pins and let's see what we think. Okay, it looks perfect. Much better. So you can see how I just kind of fixed that little bit of wonkiness. And that's something you're going to want to fix instead of you continuing to build that out. Okay, now right here, what's really important is you need this to go ahead and match up with your seams right inside. So you want that square to match up with the points of those 2 pink up to that red. So let's go ahead and bring that in there and just carefully take a peek at it, lay it down, and let's go ahead and do some pins right here. All right, let's go ahead and do the next one. There we go. And let's go ahead and stitch that on. And we're just going to go ahead and stitch these 4 little guys right on here. And then our whole block will completely come together. And I'm just stitching through additional layers of the paper. And this is when you definitely want all of that to come together. So you can see how that's perfectly matched up just right there. Okay, let's go ahead and go to our next one. Let's do the opposite side. And once again, we're going to just match that up right like that. Okay. And you're going to keep building these out. We have just 2 more to stitch on. And then you'll see this block. Now, you might feel like some of these corners are, you know, what you're not going to see later is these are your 1/4 inch seam allowances right here. So you won't see these when you attach this quilt block to the rest of the quilt. So don't feel worried about not, so for example, see how this white is coming out over here? When we attach this piece to that white just hanging out right there, it doesn't seem as natural, but it will then be hidden. So once again, let's match this up with our little white piece. And we're going to lay that right on there. And we've got that there. Let's go ahead and stick a pin in it so it stays. And let's go like that. Okay, here we go. And let's stitch that across. And we just have our very last one to do, which is fantastic. Okay, so we've got that one. and our very last side, and we will have our 25 pieces of paper come together, or pieces of fabric, into the content block. So remember, we want to feel contentment with our trials, with hardships. We want to know that we are going to become stronger as we experience more things in life. We'll have more experience to then share with others, and to use that wealth into helping and serving other people as we, are along the path. So isn't that just the most darling little content block? I will go ahead and press this really with a nice hot iron. I'm going to want to get all of those papers flat. Remember, I used a little bit of tape on there, but that tape is just fine. And then I will use actually a ruler to kind of lay on here and keep that little block flat. Let's go ahead and flip the camera around, and you can see we have this totally finished. Isn't that just the cutest little content quilt block? So we have it right there, and it's just perfectly sized. And then it will go into your foundation paper piecing Live Well, Live Strong quilt that is 20 by 20 inches. Love you guys so much. I will see you a little bit later. And remember to stay content and focus on contentment. Our next quilt block is power, and where our sources of power come from, and strength. We'll talk to you a little bit later. It's so good to see you guys. And remember that all will be well, but finding contentment even through hardship is one of the best tricks in life, and the greatest wealth that we can ever tap into. All right, love you guys tons. See you later.